Hello again. I have of course remarked before, more than once, that when ideology and science clash, there can in the long run be only one result, which is of course the triumph of science. Before that final victory, though, things can certainly get very unpleasant, and there are almost invariably victims whose suffering ranges from uh, losing their jobs to being executed or thrown into concentration camps. In this country, of course, only the milder of these misfortunes is likely to befall those who oppose the current orthodoxy. I want to look at a couple of recent examples of this clash between political beliefs and the scientific method as it is being seen today in Britain. But before doing so, perhaps I ought to explain where this kind of thing can lead, and indeed has led, in the past. History teaches us that when ideology and science get mixed up, the outcome is very seldom promising. One thinks of Nazi Germany, where Einstein's theory of relativity was rejected because it had been formulated by a Jew. German scientists chose instead to stick with Die Deutsche Physik, or German physics. This led, among other things, to weather forecasting being based upon the mad idea of world ice, which may have been thoroughly German, but depended upon a belief that the stars were really no more than big chunks of ice. We remember too Soviet Russia in the days when it was ruled by Stalin. Genetics and the concept of natural selection were both rejected in favour of pseudoscientific suppositions which accorded with the Marxist ideology in favour at that time. This was a disaster for agriculture, as it led to the mad theory of Lysenkoism, which, while ideologically pure and politically correct, was wholly unscientific, and, among other things, rejected the very idea of genes. People were actually executed for talking about genes and thrown into concentration camps if they supported the idea of genes and chromosomes. The Western world today is in the grip of precisely the same kind of irrational thinking as that seen in Russia and Germany in the early 1940s. The ruling doctrine today, not only in sociology but also education, science, and business, relates not to Aryan supremacy or dialectical materialism, but is rather represented as championing the supposed rights of various minorities in the cause of equity and fairness. So it is that those people that want sex changes, and of course black people, their rights all have to be advanced and, um, how can we put this? They must stand in front of the rights of the majority at all times. It puts those of you who ask questions about it in an invidious position because since it's framed in terms of fairness and rights, very few of us wish to be seen as opponents of fairness. In Britain today, there is what we might describe as an ideology of liberalness and progressive thought, which nobody wishes to be seen to contradict. It relates to both sexual identity and ethnicity. This ideology, for instance, holds that whether an adult human is a man or woman depends not on their physical body or chromosomes, but upon what kind of soul or spirit they have. Some men have a female spirit, and conversely there are women who have the soul of a man. This belief is of course not a scientific one, since we cannot measure or test the soul. Nevertheless, we are all expected to pay lip service to the idea. Science tells us that humans with XX chromosomes are female, and those with XY chromosomes are male rather, sorry. This is nothing to do with spirits or souls. At Porton Down, the government research centre which used to deal with biological warfare and now combines that with other scientific work, a man was forced out of his job for subscribing openly to the scientific view of sex as it relates to chromosomes and physical traits such as the genitals. Most of the workers at this government scientific laboratory believe in souls. That is to say, a man may have the soul of a woman and in some mysterious sense actually be a woman because of the state of his spirit or soul. Although this is an ideological rather than a scientific belief, it is apparently held by most of the scientists at Porton Down. I give a link to a news item about this in the description to this video. In other words, a man holding a scientific and rational view about sex has been driven from his job by scientists who instead adhere to a strange ideology which upholds the existence of spirits as a determining factor in deciding the sex of a person, rather than their chromosomes or physical attributes. This is disturbing. Meanwhile, at the British base in the Antarctic, the British Antarctic Survey, staff have been issued with a guide to inclusivity. This contains a surprising suggestion that if you claim that in employment practice the most qualified person should get the job, this can be a form of racial harassment. It is described in the guide as the myth of meritocracy. This too is a perfect instance of the way in which an ideology, in this case one known as critical race theory of course, can take precedence over common sense and reason. In the description to this video I give links to newspaper articles about both these matters. What is going on in Britain today is that reason, logic and facts are increasingly being viewed with suspicion and are expected to be subordinate to ideology. It is ideas which are to be regarded as the real thing, the substance if you like, and the actual physical features of the world, things such as chromosomes and so on, are to be treated as phantoms which must obey the political ideas which are circulating. In this way, objective reality becomes a shadow, and the real thing in the world consists of ideas. As I said earlier, this is precisely what happened in both Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia. What is frightening is that those championing this strange worldview are usually irreligious types, atheists for the most part, who pride themselves upon being rational people. That they are now standing up for the idea of souls is very odd, especially since they don't seem to know that that is what they are really doing. This state of affairs cannot last forever. Soon there will be a reaction and a return to reason and the values of the Enlightenment. Speaking strictly for myself, this time cannot come quick enough.